Morning everyone. Just for the purposes of today, for the next, I think, 10 minutes, because I know we're conscious we're tight on time, I'll talk for 4, I'll play a video for 6. So just in terms of general background, the focus, I think from Giaggio's perspective, looked at the male-female split. For the purposes of this presentation, we're going to look at the age demographic of the business. McCann Manchester, for those that don't know, business of around 260, based in Prestbury in Cheshire. We're a fully integrated advertising and communications agency, national and international client base, and we've recently acquired another digital business in the centre of Manchester. It's a beautiful location to work, but it's not actually accessed by public road, which makes the HR concept of recruitment slightly more challenging. Just as a brief bit of background, I've been with the business now for about 2 years, and it was interesting the point that was made earlier on to talk about how you look to bring the business and enable and support the business. My primary role within the business is to enable the business. When I joined around 2 years ago, I think the view of HR was as an implementer rather than an enabler. And one of the first things that we did collectively as a business is we took all the disparate bits of recruitment and development initiatives and used our own techniques to brand it all under one banner. And everything that we do in terms of attracting, retaining and developing talent within the business is under our Talent Tree banner, which is about nurturing and growing talent. And the success that we've had with that over the past few years is that as of this year, we've logged to date, last Friday, because Anna and my team put these stats together for me yesterday, we've logged 2,722 development hours. For a business of 260, we've had 202 participants on a development initiatives year to date, and we've supported and facilitated 70 courses. Out of that, there's only about 15 or 16 courses that were actually run by external facilitators. So we've been very good in developing a culture of development within the business, and it's been very successful. As a means of taking that forward, one of the things that we identified in 2010 was that we needed a younger demographic to the business. We didn't at that point have too many people under the age of 25. It actually skewed in terms of the national average, particularly in our industry, in terms of young people. Because they couldn't get to the site, the average age of the business was from 25 to 35. So what we were looking for was a young demographic, digitally savvy. We wanted to increase our productivity, build on the success of our Talent Tree initiatives, enhance our employer brand as a means of attracting people into the business, create partnerships, and again, sustainable partnerships with learning providers and institutions around the local area where we worked. We wanted to invest in talent, we wanted to stimulate the industry and bring fresh blood into it, and we wanted, fundamentally, for the business to buy into it, we wanted integrated, ready talent. One of the key things within the business was that if you went through a traditional media qualification and came out after 3 years, you may have one silo that you operated in. What we required as an integrated advertising agency was a full integrated spectrum. So in terms of looking at that talent and bringing it into the business, these are the more traditional means that we'd look to do our talent acquisition piece. But pretty soon we identified that around late 2010, that it would be advantageous to build an apprentice programme. I think the traditional view of the apprentice was changing, the way that people looked at course and tuition fees and a lot of the publicity that surrounded it. And we decided to invest quite heavily in developing our own development programme. And that's where we created our integrated marketing and communications apprenticeship scheme. Okay, this subtle slide tells me now I need to play the video.
The facts around youth unemployment make for stark reading. A lost generation in the making. This is the story of how Britain's leading integrated marketing communications agency decided to act, and to play its part in making a contribution to addressing this issue of our times. Set against the scale of the problem, McCann Manchester's efforts could be seen as a drop in the ocean. But by creating the UK's first full apprenticeship scheme for people aged between 16 and 19 who want a career in marketing, the company is looking to turn the scheme into a cornerstone for the recruitment and development of future talent. This is the story of how they did it, and the story of 4 exceptionally bright and talented apprentices.
The McCann Manchester Apprenticeship Scheme is our 12-month paid placement programme. It's aimed at 16 to 19-year-olds who are keen to embark on a career in integrated marketing and communications, with a real chance of a job at the end of it. The traditional entry route into the industry of going to university for 3 years, joining the business is fine and it's still valid. though the industry is still evolving, and for me, so should our approach in terms of attracting diverse new talent. The proof of success for me is that we've got 4 fantastically talented young, digitally savvy individuals in the business who are adding real value, and it's a reciprocal relationship for us all. And in essence, 3 words for me: it's energy, it's passion, and it's enthusiasm.
Well, I was at college and I did that for about a year, and I didn't really like it. It was all theory work, and I felt like maybe if I could get somewhere, a workplace, it would be much more valuable than going to university. And also I won't be in debt. So that's when I started looking for apprenticeships, and that's when I found this.
I feel it would be more beneficial for me to sort of learn on the job and see things actually happening and see the whole process in the industry and how the end product is made, basically.
Having the idea was one thing, turning it into a reality was a different matter entirely. For years, colleges have created apprenticeship schemes around traditional craft skills like engineering. But when McCann went looking for a college to help them, they realised they were breaking new ground. So they turned to the Apprentices Network.
You could argue that apprenticeships are the new degrees, and lots of young people and their parents are very, very interested in students following an apprenticeship programme, certainly an advanced apprenticeship programme, as opposed to running up the debt of going to university. We also believe that it's very progressive employers, McCann of course being one of them, that want their staff to undergo this sort of an apprenticeship scheme.
One of the things that we wanted to achieve with the scheme was to equip people to actually work and become stars in an integrated agency environment, and what that meant was enabling them to have experience of all of the disciplines in an agency. Now traditionally, when we'd employed graduates, we got one discipline that they'd spent 3 years learning. What we wanted to do was to put our apprentices on almost a crash course, as it were, of absorbing all of the disciplines in the agency, which would make them so much more relevant to working in this type of environment.
Getting the scheme in place was a massive challenge for McCann and its chosen education partner, Macclesfield College, because everything had to be created from the ground up.
McCann's are doing an accelerated course. They're covering in 12 months an advanced apprenticeship, and that's a level 3 course, but it's quite specific in marketing. They're also taking the Chartered Institute of Marketing, the CIM exams as well, and I think they're sensing that they are valued by the company. You know, they said from the beginning they weren't treated in any way differently. They're treated as an employee, which is great.
Creating the scheme was only half the story. Finding the brightest, most ambitious apprentices to participate in the scheme was the next challenge the team faced. And that took some doing when the applications ran into the hundreds.
My dad's quite a corporate guy, and so from the things he was telling me and things he's told me in the past, I was expecting kind of questions like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? How do you think you'll fit into our corporation? What will you bring to the table? That kind of thing. And there was an element of that, but it was so far out there. It was something I'd not kind of seen before. It made me think so much about how I could help and what I could do. So it was an extreme between what I thought I might get and what was actually on the questions.
For my interview, I got dropped off at the edge of the drive because I didn't want to be right at the reception. And then I kind of regretted that when I started walking up the drive and saw that massive imposing building. But everyone, I felt, as soon as I walked through the door, I felt really comfortable. Yeah, the application process was really good fun, but it was hard work and took a long time to get it right.
In less than 12 months, McCann went from having the idea on paper to having 4 apprentices on the programme.
I've loved it. I've really loved it. It was just, like I said before, college wasn't really my thing. I always knew I wanted to get a job rather than go to uni, and it's not disappointed. It's really reaffirmed the fact that this is where I want to be and where I want to stay, so I've really enjoyed it.
It's not like go get the coffee, go get the tea, do this copying or printing. It's been, the work we've been getting is real stuff.
All this amazing knowledge and talent, there's so many talented people here to draw from and find information from. It's really inspiring.
It's just completely amazing driving up the drive. It's fantastic, and I love driving to work every day. I love driving up. I think it's a fantastic place to work, yeah.
In terms of the success of the scheme, I have to say that I'm absolutely thrilled, delighted and so excited about what we've created here. Probably because the 4 young people that we've actually selected are so good at what they're doing, so committed, so passionate about the business. We really couldn't have picked 4 better students. With regard to the success of the scheme, perhaps I've only got to say one thing, and that is that we're already making plans for this year's scheme, and in fact we're looking for 8 apprentices rather than 4. I think that says it all.
And that's our class of 2012. We've just recently taken on a further 6 apprentices in September of this year. I think those apprentices put it far more eloquently than I could ever do that. That one. Okay, in terms of the scheme itself, what we offer and what we offered in 2011 was a 12-month learning contract. It's not a contract of employment. It's a learning contract for a specific 12-month period. They're not charged out to clients. They don't work specifically on one piece of client business. They're rotated. They're surplus to existing headcount. They study 1 day a week with Macclesfield College. They cover 6 department placements across 2-month blocks. We do 9 internal masterclasses which are run by the business through leaders of the business around their specific areas. We operate a mentoring and buddy scheme, and there's a feedback cycle that we implemented at the end of each placement, which is a reciprocal feedback. And they study for an advanced apprenticeship level 3 MBQ in marketing. Just those 4 that you saw in the video there, all 4 out of that cycle have now got full-time roles with the agency. One's working with our media planning and buying team, one's in creative, one's in Aldi, which we work as a specific client on, and one's in new business. In terms of the placements, we place them all around 6 key areas of the business, so they'll spend time in planning, creative, digital, PR and social media, account management, and media planning and buying. In terms of our key findings, so obviously we went into this somewhat with our eyes open, but we didn't understand where we would get to when we first started off. Again, traditional apprenticeships, we quickly found out that the view of the apprentice being somebody that worked in an engineering background was an old redundant theme. We were tapping into individuals that didn't want to pay £9,000 in terms of course fees, so we found a catchment group. And additionally, 2 of the individuals that came through our first apprenticeship scheme were individuals that we found weren't going to go via higher education. So if we hadn't have operated our apprenticeship scheme, perhaps they wouldn't have had an opportunity to work within our industry. Partnerships are key. We've developed some fantastic partnerships, not just with Macclesfield College, but we've had to do a number of initiatives with local schools and communities to build relationships to get the pipeline of potential apprentices into the business. We've used our internal expertise and we've also developed our people, and it's cost effective. We've done a lot with people in the business. There are individuals that are developing their mentoring and coaching skills, their buddy skills, cost-effective means of recruiting talent into the business. I don't need to preach about what the average cost of hire is. Obviously there are savings significantly in terms of those costs. One of the biggest successes that we found was perception and engagement. We did a survey at the start of this year. It wasn't to the success of Diageo. We got 85% return rate. But what we found is there was a large feeling within the business that people loved the fact that we invested in apprentices and invested in talent. And again, part of the culture of the business now, with us being an enabler from a HR perspective, we tend to see really good success there. We've created a legacy in terms of a programme that wasn't just operated for a period of 1 year. And from the business perspective, we've also got productive, engaged colleagues, which impacts on our commerciality. In terms of our employer brand, we've had really good success because, again, those aspects and the positive aspects of operating an apprenticeship scheme can impact on all areas of your employer brand through awards recognition. And finally, just in terms of the class of 2012, we're in our first cycle at the moment, and I think going forward for the next 12 months, our aim is to have at least 4 of those apprentices engaged in permanent full-time roles in September. Again, it's about having the metrics in place and a target to aim for. This isn't about just wearing a badge to say we've done a fantastic apprenticeship scheme that runs out after a period of 12 months. As a business, not just HR, but the business feel very passionately about, at all levels, about having apprentices on board and the value that we place behind them within the business. Thanks for your time. I'll take some questions.
Morning, everybody. How are you doing this morning? Good. So I've been invited by the IPA here to just share with you some of the initiatives that we've been doing at BBH. We certainly don't have all the answers, but we do have some things that we'd like to talk to you about this morning. So when we talk about diversity, what we actually measure at BBH is our ethnicity, our gender, our social backgrounds and our disability. And a bit like everyone's been saying this morning, it's really simple why we do this, because we genuinely believe that a more diverse agency is of course going to lead us to better creative work. So today, because of time restrictions, I'm going to focus on ethnicity and gender. So when we were thinking about stats, and Jim Carroll's our chairman, and he tends to lead these initiatives, and he's a strategist. So, you know, strategists, you have to have data. So we were thinking about, okay, so when we think about stats and ethnicity, what stats do we start with? And I'm not talking about this as an aspirational point, I'm talking about this as a baseline. So we thought, okay, BAM population in the UK is 11%, but we're in London, and that's 30%, but we're not just a London-centric agency. We look at the IPA, we look at the data that they've collected, it's 9%. And currently ours BAM population runs at 12%. And the majority of that talent is actually people who are involved in the creative process. So rather than people in back office, finance, etc., actually 79% of that population are people who are in our creative department, they're in our strategy department, they're in our team management department, which is our equivalent of account management, and our production department. So then going on to the gender mix, again, let's look at some stats. The IPA tells us that only 13.5% of senior positions in agencies are taken up by women. Looking at BBH's gender mix, you go population-wise, we're pretty much 50-50. And then, unsurprisingly, as you start going through the ranks, it's more senior, men are more senior than women. There are more senior men rather than women. And also, if you look at our senior, anyone who knows BBH, if you look at our senior department, senior management team, our MD, our chairman, our deputy chairman, our FD, they're all men, okay? But they also have a tenure of 15 years. So there isn't much opportunity in those positions in our London office that come up that often. Hence, the men are still occupying those positions. But if you look globally around our agency, we do have female MDs, we do have female chairs, and we do have female CEOs. So our other offices are a bit more gender diverse than we are. But for me, the biggest gender challenge is in our creative department, and Andy talked about it a bit earlier. I mean, you go 50% of the adult population are women. You look at the art schools, they're graduating. There's 50% women graduating. Adland is 47.8%. I mean, we've got 50% women. And we're purchasing power-wise, that sits with the women. They're 85%. But again, just 22.5% of creative teams, and this is again IPA survey of female, and 3% CDs are female. And this isn't just an integrated problem for our agencies, it's also replicated in relation to digital and to new. Turning to BBH specifically, we have one creative director, and that's Rosie Arnold, very famous deputy ECD. Senior creatives, there's none there. And then as you go through the ranks, again, they fall off and they fall off. So for us, and this is something we've been debating internally quite a lot, what do we need to do in order to create better creative females as well within the industry? As I said earlier, we don't have all the answers, but I just wanted to share with you some of our initiatives that we have been doing. And I want to talk to you about two initiatives that talk about both the ethnic and the gender. So what we've done is we no longer do a graduate placement scheme. We are now doing, we've done for a couple of years now, something called our homegrown. So a bit like the talent tree, we've branded it homegrown. And this is basically giving people a 3-month paid, because I think it's really important that people are paid, placement scheme. And the homegrown, basically people can be placed anywhere in the agency in relation to strategy or team management, and they are 4 people each quarter. And just looking at the BAM population across the last year, we've managed to attract and retain for that period of time 30% BAM, and in our last October intake, 75%. We also run a creative placement scheme called Barn, and that is specifically for creatives. So we deal with 4 teams, so that's 8 people. And again, looking at the stats, overall the year it was 66% male, 33% female, but our last October intake, I'm quite proud to say, we actually have gender teams of male-female, so they're equal 50-50. So that's pay, placement. What else do we do? We also do outreach. So we've been running something for about 6 years with the Roundhouse in Camden called the Buzz Project. And that is specifically an advertising course for the youth of today who can come along for 6 weeks and have people from BBH learning, talking to them about our advertising industry and what that's like. And I'm sure a lot of you here also do the Ideas Foundation, and of course we do school visits, we do university visits. We've also produced a video asset as well, which I'm going to show you towards the end, and that's because there are only a certain amount of hours in the day. Everybody does this on top of their day job, so as well as the labour, the time of going and physically talking to people, we also wanted to produce something that we could actually put out there and seed and get a better target audience as well. On the gender, I think we're industry leaders on flexible working practices. 95% of our returning mothers work flexible working pattern, which we're very proud of. Now that can be people working from home, it can be job shares, it can be just contracted hours, so working mothers don't work the summer, for instance. It can be 2 or 3 days. And for me, yes, that is a statistic about working mothers, but it's not just about that. It's about the retaining an agile workforce. So, for instance, we have one of our creative directors works part-time. We have another guy who heads up our head of creative technology. He lives in Wales, so he works from home on a Friday. So again, it's about retaining that talent and finding a different way of them engaging with the agency. And then just on the creative point of gender, we've also just recently refreshed our involvement with creative art colleges and just making sure that we're improving our links in relation to them. So just going on to the video asset that I spoke to you about. So we thought, right, how can we, rather than all of us all the time going out and spreading the word, how can we produce an asset that highlights the roles within an agency in a cool way that's going to talk to the young band audience? We needed to make sure that it was a digital asset because this is where these guys occupy, and we know from Ofcom that actually this population are at the forefront of the digital communication. So what we did was, I don't know how many of you saw our Jamal Google Chrome ad. We spoke to Jamal Edwards because he is a cool entrepreneur. When he was 15 years old, his mum gave him a camcorder, and now he's like doing very well, thank you very much. He's got his own online TV program called SBTV Channel. Actually, it's not a TV program. He's got his own channel. And so he came in and he basically spoke to our Google team who produced the ad. And they're quite an ethnically diverse team. And we let him do it in his own sweet way. We weren't very BBH about it. We let him produce it and do it in his own kind of iconic way. And then what we did was we seeded this video. We took advice from a company called Unruly to tell us how we could reach the target audience we wanted to. And we monitored how that linked into our homegrown, because at the very end, as you'll see, there's a homegrown mention. And you can see that 30,000 views, over 40% watched it till the end. It's a 5-minute video for the purpose of today. I've shortened it down to 3, be pleased to know. And then the hits on our website went up from 184 to 436, and we can say that a third of that was specifically down to this video. So I'll just cue the video for you.
Hi, my name is Rowena, and I'm the team director here at BBH. We came across the story of Jamal, which we thought was really interesting. So we sold that into the client. So I was key to that whole process.
So the big boss.
If you like, yeah.
The female boss. So what was your role in the making of the fabulous Google Chrome advert?
Yeah, it was fabulous. I was the TV producer, so we basically look after the process from start to finish, getting it basically from the script to the finished commercial. I got into advertising through doing work experience.
I'm Ash, creative director from BBH.
Name 3 things that make a good creative director.
3 things. Open-minded. That sounds corny, but yeah, open-minded. I think you have to be very giving. I think approachable is quite quite a useful thing.
I'm Jason Gonzalez. I am a managing partner at BBH. I'm also the head of strategy, and I run this part of the agency called Sprint.
Name 3 things that makes a good head of strategy.
I think you've got to be able to take very complicated things and make them simple. That's the main thing, really. You know, so you take all the problems a client has with their business, all the things that they put into a product, all the things that people in the real world worry about every day, and you take all of that stuff and you boil it down and you say, of all of that stuff, this is the one thing I think this ad needs to communicate. So you've got to be really good at simplifying things. And then the second thing I think you've got to be good at is trying to turn simple things into something that's inspiring.
So if you want to get involved and you're watching this right now and you're wondering how to get into places like BBH, make sure you check out BBH Homegrown online. Peace.
So that's what we've come up with. There's some of the initiatives. It's very much a road that we've got to travel further on, but just some interesting and new ways of trying to attract that diverse talent.